fun little mini project and will help me for the future project. So this is the wall of the passenger side headlight, but this thing goes here, and that is the VIN plate, information plate on the car. Please feed the YouTube algorithm by giving the video a like. If you want to see more like this, click subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of new videos. If you want to chip in on my expenses, I now have Patreon and YouTube memberships. Unfortunately, the guys who restored and painted the car didn't cover this up, so it got painted gray, and you can see the paint flaking off, plus this is all scratched up from when the battery box was right here, and that's my fault. I scratched the crap out of that. So I'm going to carefully take the paint off this, bring it back to a nice original silver plate, prepare all this, repaint it, and then remount that there. That will be a good test to see if I can effectively fix the scratch that's on the trunk lid, which worries me a lot. Okay, there it is. I sanded it down with 220 and it's pretty smooth. I got to read the directions to find out how much I need to prep this, what kind of surface it wants, bare metal or primed, and then we'll go from there. I picked up this really cool spray kit at Napa. You put your paint in the bottom, and then it's got a controlled spraying system, which is pretty much what I'm looking for, because I don't need to go crazy with the spray. I just need small area. I can mask it off. And let me go and check the directions that came with the touch-up paint. Okay, I checked the instructions that came with the touch-up paint. They custom mix a specific batch of your factory car color and put it in this tiny little bottle. I don't know how much that is, maybe 2 ounces. It's that big. And then a bottle of clear coat. And their instructions are sand to 600, prime with 3 coats, let it dry, then apply this, sand again 600, I'm assuming wet soapy water, and then put your clear coat on, sand that. I watched a guy do a Ferrari touch-up. He did soapy water with wet dry sandpaper, 600, 1500, 3000, and then he buffed it with a cream, and it absolutely looked magnificent. So we're going to follow a similar path. Okay, the VIN plate is now shiny and beautiful after soaking in this evapo rust stuff last night. It actually does much more than rust. It'll take off paint too. With a little persuasion, it's looking very shiny. So let's paint that inside the car and get this back in place. Okay, that's 600 wet sanding. I went up to the natural line break, and that's where I'm going to mask it off, and we'll do that whole area so it doesn't look funny. Okay, I cleaned off the surface with a degreaser, and then I masked it up. Do you think I'm being overly cautious? Oh yeah, but you know, if that's what I gotta do to protect all of this, then that's what I'm gonna do. Ready to go for the first light coat of primer, and then every 2 minutes. Okay, the priming is done, and it was, I think, successful. I actually ended up putting on about 10 coats. Is when they said light coats, I made light coats. I'm talking an atom thick here, ridiculously light coats. So I did about 10 coats, spaced 2 minutes apart, until the metal underneath was opaque to the thickness of the primer. And I'm going to let that sit till tomorrow. Then I will do an experiment with the finished color, and we'll see how that works out. Okay, I gave the primer a light sanding this morning, and I've prepared the paint in the spray bottle, And I'll tell you, this stuff is hard to mix because the metallic flakes don't mix very well. So I'm wondering how this is all going to turn out. But we'll see. Well, that went completely badly. The sprayer apparently is not powerful enough to draw the paint up and actually spray it, because the paint's quite thick, but it's designed for automotive paint, so I don't know what the deal is. I was trying to spray right here as a test, and literally nothing came out. So I think I'll go and see if I can find some thinner and knock it down 2 to 1 and see if that will help the problem. So I went in search of auto paint suppliers, and I found a company here in Cape Girardeau with almost exactly the same name. Guy was kind of a D-bag. I asked for auto paint thinner, and he said, we don't have any of that. And I'm looking around in an auto paint supply store. I said, well, what do you use if the paint's too thick to go in the sprayer? And he says, oh, we use reducer. So I wasn't using the right word for reducer. And then I showed him the sample or the touch-up bottle, and he couldn't tell me what the base material was in that, if it's enamel, if it's urethane, because that depends a lot on how you want to thin it down. And he said, well, I've got this one thing, but it's a gallon and it costs $60. And that's the best he could do. It's absolutely zero help. So I went around the corner to Napa, and the guy pointed to this on the shelf, full base reducer for urethane paint. And it cost 20 bucks. So I bought it, brought it home, mixed it down approximately 1 to 1 in the spray bottle, and it turns it almost into a pure watery liquid, which went through the spray system absolutely perfectly. This, you take this cap off, you screw this on, and it draws it up through the straw, and Bob's your uncle. So let's see how it looks. So again, I went for ultralight coats. I probably did 15 coats altogether, and I really, really like the way it turned out. The metallic flakes are uniform. There's no streaks or runs or fish eyes from having any water in there, and it just looks great. What I did is I would give it a very, very light spray. I would turn this fan on, which would blow away the mist and the VOCs for 2 minutes, then do another coat. And I did it probably 15 times because I have to come back and sand it with 600, 1500, and 3000 before I put the clear coat on tomorrow. But I'm very, very happy with the way that turned out. And that little spray bottle system for $7 at Napa, it was absolutely perfect for the job. The clear coat is on and dried overnight. So let's start removing the paper and see what we've got. Okay, peel it off. The seams look pretty good. I'm happy, good coverage. It might not be apparent from the video, and it depends on the angle that you look at, but this is definitely a slightly darker tone than the original. But you could put it down as a trick of the light, depending on how you look at it. And it's going to be mostly hidden, so I'm not worried. Oh, that was a lot of work for a very small payoff, but makes me happy. Now I can rivet in the VIN plate, and it's all good. And there she is with the VIN plate back in place, just like she should have been after the restoration. As I was researching the VIN number locations on the car, there's one right here in a sticker in the door frame. There's the VIN plate here, and other people said there's one on the passenger wheel arch, what I never noticed before, but you know what? It's right there. That got painted over, and that I am not going to touch. The Spanish authorities they're just gonna hopefully not even know it's there. Oh, and the fourth location is, of course, the plate that goes right here. So I'm going to give them 4, because they want it stamped into the floorboard, the floor plate of the car here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not giving them 5. That's where I draw the line, because I am not going to screw up the paint there, which inevitably I will. And here's another vehicle identification number conundrum. This is the VIN plate that normally is bolted in right about here in the windshield of most cars. The problem is I forgot to put this in when they replaced the window glass. So therefore I've got this thing. It's got 2 rivet holes which are meant to be riveted somewhere deep down inside here. I've also seen it where on some cars it's right here, and clearly this needs to go inside this rubber. So let's have a look and see what we have access to and where I can get a couple of screws or a couple of rivets in, and then cover it up with rubber trim and make it look presentable to your average police officer who might object to it not being correct. Good news and bad news, as is most of the projects with this car. I took the A-pillar trim off, which was quite easy, and I found 2 holes right here which exactly fit the profile for the VIN plate. And it literally, that's exactly where it goes. And I could put some screws in, or maybe even get some pop rivets in there, potentially. But the downside is, when they replaced the glass, the installers put this fancy black strip. They painted this fancy black strip all the way around the windshield. And if you look at how the plate goes on, it's completely obscured by the black strip. Let me go around the outside. Can we see that? So that's not going to work. I either have to extend the plate somehow, like that, or remove the strip of paint in this section to make sure that it's visible. Got to think about that, see which way I want to go. Well, after a few days of thinking about it, I decided I'm going to not touch the metal of the plate. I am going to remove the section of this stripe along where this plate is going to mount, so that I don't get in any trouble by being accused of altering the VIN. And so I'm going to put a piece of tape here, cut with a very sharp X-Acto blade to separate the pieces, and then come in with a scraping blade and remove the rest of that black paint. Then I'll pop rivet this into place, and it's all done. Cross your fingers that it goes smoothly, because nothing else is. It's kind of hard to see, but I went ahead and I made the notch in the paint. Starts here and goes down to there. It's about as smooth as I can get it. And what I found was this helps the guys who are installing the glass, because they can have like bleh, all smear of the rubber sealant, which I had to clean out before I got a nice square rectangular space. So let's go ahead and install the plate and we'll be done. Okay, it's in and riveted, and there's a bit of a black mark here, but that's on the plate, and I tried everything to get that off. I tried chemicals, I tried a wire wheel, nothing worked, and I went, screw it, that's just the way it's going to be. So we have a VIN. Are you happy? And now we come to the very last step of making all of the vehicle identification numbers compliant. This is a letter and number stamping set that I got from Harbor Freight. It's the biggest numbers and letters they've got. And I've got to stamp the VIN number right here. I thought I was going to have to take apart the entire front of the car, but luckily the carpet just rolls back, and that is the underpan of the car. So what I think I'll do is I'll grind off some of this undercoating that I sprayed on back in the day, make it nice and shiny. I'll stamp it or mask it off, make it nice and clean, stamp the numbers, and call this one done. Well, with everything, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. I finally got down to bare metal. There's at least 1/4 of an inch of built up goo, sticky goo, probably a mixture of sound deadening and rust prevention. But I managed to get a clean piece of steel, big enough for the letters or for the numbers I need to stamp in. So let's do that. Do you see a 4 there? Because I don't. There's a 4, and I hit it as hard as I could with this steel mallet, and all it did was bend the floorboards down. It didn't make the mark of the number. So either I'm going to have to make a VIN plate and rivet it into place, or put a piece of something underneath the car and lower it down so that there's no give, and then try and pound the numbers into this thing. It's just like, come on guys, every little frickin' thing. After all that effort and not being able to stamp the numbers into the steel, despite trying very hard, I contacted the company in Spain that's going to help me import the car and told him what the problem was. And he said, oh, well, as long as there's other VIN numbers on the car, then everything's okay. Are you kidding me? You were the one who told me that the car had to have that number stamped right there. Spain, why do you do this to me? Anyway, VIN numbers complete. Just before we wrap up, I want to thank my Patreons, Peter Bouvier and Puppy, for their support. We also just popped over 2,000 subscribers, which is quite a nice milestone for my little channel. All support is greatly appreciated. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, please give it a thumbs up. I see that 81% of the viewers aren't subscribed. Please do, as it does help the YouTube algorithm. Take care and see you next time.